The stars were quiet that night, but quiet did not mean safe. Not anymore, not since the Vreth came. 3 years ago, the universe had changed forever, and Earth had not been ready for it. No one had. Commander Ilara Voss stood at the window of Space Station Meridian and looked out into the dark. She had dark eyes, short black hair, and a face that had seen too much in too little time. She was only 34 years old, but she looked 50. The war did that to people. It took the young parts of you and burned them away, and left only the tired parts behind, below her. The planet Earth turned slowly in the darkness, blue and green and white. Still beautiful, still alive, but for how long? That was the question no one wanted to ask out loud. Ilara pressed her hand against the cold glass and closed her eyes. She remembered the day the Vreth arrived. It had started with a signal, a strange, repeating sound that came from deep space, far beyond any human colony or probe. The scientists at the Deep Space Listening Post on Mars had picked it up first. They had been excited. They thought it was first contact. They thought it was history. They were right, but not in the way they hoped. The signal was not a greeting, it was a warning. Or maybe it was a threat. The difference, as humanity would soon learn, did not matter to the Vreth. The Vreth called themselves the First People. They believed they were the oldest and most powerful race in the galaxy, and from what humanity had seen so far, it was hard to argue with that. Their ships were massive. Each one was bigger than a city, made of dark metal that seemed to eat light instead of reflect it. Their weapons could split a moon in half if they wanted to, and their soldiers, the ones they called the Greth, were tall, cold, and completely without mercy. The Vreth did not come to talk, they came to take. The first attack had been on the colony of New Carthage, a human settlement on the edge of the Outer Rim. About 6 light years from Earth, New Carthage had 12,000 people. Scientists, farmers, engineers, children, families who had moved there to build a new life on a new world. The Vreth had destroyed it in 47 minutes. Not a single building was left standing. Not a single life was spared. When the rescue ships arrived from Earth 2 days later, they found only silence and ash. The colony was gone, erased like it had never existed. The news had reached Earth and broken something inside the people there. Not just sadness, not just anger, something deeper. Something that felt like the first real fear humanity had ever known as a species. Because for the first time, humans were not the strongest thing in the room. After New Carthage, Earth had tried diplomacy. Admiral Grace Chen, the head of the Earth Defense Council, had personally recorded a message and sent it toward the Vreth fleet. She had spoken carefully. She had offered peace. She had asked for a meeting. She had used every respectful word she knew. She never got a reply. What she got instead was the wreckage of the ship that had carried her message. The Vreth had shot it down and sent the pieces back. That was their answer. The Earth Defense Council met an emergency session that same night. Ilara had been there sitting near the back of the room, young and still relatively junior at the time. She had watched the older generals and politicians argue for hours. Some wanted to fight, some wanted to hide. Some wanted to evacuate the planet entirely and scatter humanity across the stars so the Vreth could never destroy them all at once. In the end, they chose to fight. But it was not going well. Over the next 2 years, Earth lost colony after colony. The Vreth moved slowly, methodically, like they were not in a hurry, like they were enjoying it. They would arrive at a human settlement, cut off all communications, destroy any defense ships, and then land their ground forces. After that, it was over quickly. 16 colonies destroyed. More than 200,000 people dead. Earth's military had tried everything. They had sent fighter squadrons. They had set traps. They had used nuclear weapons. And once, in a desperate moment, they had even tried to crash a modified asteroid into a Vreth fleet ship. None of it had worked. The Vreth ships were too big, too fast and too well protected. Every battle ended the same way. Human ships destroyed, human soldiers dead. Vreth fleet moving forward. The rest of the galaxy watched and said nothing. That was the part that hurt Ilara the most. The galaxy was not empty. There were dozens of other intelligent races out there. Some of them had been in contact with humanity for decades. The Karathi, a tall blue-skinned people from the Andalis system, had been trading partners with Earth for 20 years. The Sulani, a gentle race of thinkers and philosophers, had shared science and art with humans for even longer. But when the Vreth came, everyone went quiet. The Karathi ambassador had sent a private message to Earth that said, simply, "We are sorry, we cannot help you. The Vreth are too powerful to stand against them is to die. We hope you find another way." The Sulani had sent nothing. Neither had anyone else. The galaxy had looked at Earth, looked at the Vreth, done the math, and decided that humanity was already dead. They were just waiting for the last chapter to be written. Elara had read those reports, and she had felt something she rarely felt. Rage, pure, quiet, burning rage. But there was something else too. Something the galaxy did not know. Something that even most people on Earth did not know. There was a secret. It lived deep underground, hidden beneath the surface of 3 dead planets in the outer rim. Planets the Vreth had never bothered to scan because they showed no signs of life. No energy readings, no communication signals, and those 3 dead planets were hiding something very much alive. Elara knew what was down there. She had known for 3 years, ever since Admiral James Holt had pulled her aside in a hallway after a briefing and told her she was being transferred. She had thought it was a punishment at first. She was being sent to the Outer Rim, to a place with no name on any official map, to work on a project that had no official title. She had arrived to find a fleet. Admiral Holt was 61 years old, short, stocky, with gray hair and pale blue eyes that missed nothing. He had spent 40 years in Earth's military, and he had never lost a battle. Not because he was lucky, but because he planned. And he planned for everything, including things that had not happened yet. 22 years ago, long before the Vreth had ever appeared, Admiral Holt had started asking a question that no one else was asking. What if something out there is stronger than us? It was not a popular question at the time. Humanity had been expanding peacefully, making new discoveries, meeting friendly alien races, feeling confident about the future. The idea that something in the galaxy might want to destroy humanity had seemed paranoid, even rude, but Holt had kept asking the question, quietly, and he had kept planning. He had gone to the Earth Defense Council with a proposal. Build a second fleet, a secret fleet, something no one outside the council would know about. Not press, not public, not even most of the military. Fund it quietly, build it slowly, hide it carefully, the council had agreed. Partly because Holt was convincing, and partly because it was cheap insurance in case the worst ever happened. The worst had happened. The fleet was called Project Iron Veil. When Elara first walked into the underground facility on the dead planet called Dust 3, her mouth had gone dry. The cavern was enormous, carved out of solid rock, and inside it sat ship after ship after ship, all dark, all silent, all waiting, not small ships. Not patrol vessels or fighters, big ships, warships, the kind of ships that were built for one purpose only. Destroy. There were 512 of them. Each one had been built in secret over 20 years, with technology that was far more advanced than anything in Earth's official military fleet. The engineers on Project Iron Veil had spent 2 decades solving problems that the rest of humanity did not even know existed. They had developed new shields, new weapons, new engines that were faster and quieter than anything the Vreth had ever seen from human ships. The Vreth had been watching Earth's official military the whole time, studying it, learning its weaknesses, deciding how easy it would be to defeat, and Earth's official military was weak. That part was true, but it was also a distraction. The Vreth were looking at the hand that was waving, and not the hand that was hiding something behind its back. Elara had spent 2 years on Dust 3, training with the fleet, learning everything about Project Iron Veil, and waiting, always waiting for the right moment, for the order that had not yet come. She had asked Holt once, why not now? Why not send the fleet now, while there were still colonies to save? Holt had looked at her with those pale blue eyes and said, because if we go now and we fail, there is no second chance. We go when we are certain. Not before. She had hated that answer, but she had understood it. Every day that passed was a day another colony burned, another family gone, another piece of humanity erased from the stars. It was agony to wait. It felt like cowardice. It felt like giving up, but it was not giving up. It was something harder than fighting. It was patience. On Earth, things were getting darker. The government had told the public that the war was ongoing, that Earth's forces were fighting bravely, that things would improve, but people were not stupid. They could see the numbers. They could count the colonies that had gone silent. They could hear the gaps in the official reports. They knew something was wrong. Protests had started in the major cities. Some people demanded more action, some demanded negotiations, some simply demanded the truth. The Vreth had noticed the unrest. Their intelligence had told them that humanity was fracturing, that the people of Earth were losing hope and losing faith in their leaders. The Vreth commander, a being called High General Vroth Ka, had told his fleet that the war was nearly over, that humanity would collapse from inside before long, and the Vreth would not even need to attack Earth directly. They could simply wait and watch as humanity destroyed itself with fear. He had smiled when he said it, by all accounts, and the smile had not been kind. Back on Meridian Station, Ilara opened her eyes. She turned away from the window and looked at the small tablet in her hand. There was a new message on it. It had come in 30 minutes ago. Encrypted, brief, from Admiral Holt himself. 3 words, "It is time." Ilara read the message once, then again. Then she set the tablet down on the table and breathed slowly for a moment. 3 years of waiting, 2 years of training, 512 ships sitting in the dark under dead planets, 20 years of planning, 40 years of one old admiral asking one simple question and refusing to stop asking it. All of it, every bit of it, had been building toward this moment. She picked up her comm and pressed the channel that connected her to the fleet. "This is Commander Voss," she said. Her voice was calm. She was surprised how calm it was. "All ships, this is not a drill. Begin pre-launch sequence. We move in 6 hours. For a second there was silence, then, one by one, 512 ships began to wake up. The galaxy thought Earth was losing. The galaxy thought humanity was finished. The galaxy had already written them off, already decided the outcome, already moved on. The galaxy had made a mistake because somewhere in the dark, hidden beneath 3 dead planets at the edge of the outer rim, the real fight had not started yet, and in 6 hours it would. 6 hours. That was all the time they had before everything changed. Commander Ilara Voss walked through the corridors of Meridian Station with quick, steady steps. Her boots made a sharp sound on the metal floor. Around her, other officers moved fast, talking into comms, carrying data pads, preparing for something that most of the universe did not even know was coming. 6 hours. She kept the number in her head like a heartbeat. The message from Admiral Holt had been only 3 words. "It is time." But those 3 words carried the weight of 22 years inside them. 22 years of building, hiding, waiting, planning. 22 years of keeping a secret so large that if even one person had talked, everything would have been lost. 22 years of working in the dark, underground on dead planets, far from home, far from family, far from the sun. Ilara had only been part of it for 2 years. But even 2 years had felt like a lifetime. She could not imagine what it felt like to have carried this for 22. She found Admiral Holt in the main command room of Dust 3, the largest of the 3 hidden planets where Project Iron Veil had been built. He was standing at a large holographic table, looking at a map of the galaxy. His hands were behind his back, his face was still. He looked like a man who had already made his decision and was now simply waiting for the world to catch up to it. He did not look up when Ilara entered. But he spoke. "Commander Voss, good, sit down." She sat. Holt moved his hand over the table and the holographic map zoomed in. It focused on a region of space known as the Keth Corridor, a narrow path between 2 large asteroid fields. This was the place the Vreth used most often to move their fleet. It was the fastest route between their territory and the human colonies they were destroying one by one. "This is where we go," Holt said. "The Keth Corridor. The Vreth will have a patrol fleet there, standard formation. We have studied their patrol patterns for 18 months. We know their timing, we know their blind spots. We know exactly where they will be and when they will be there." Ilara studied the map. "And our fleet can get there without being detected." "Yes, our engines run cold," Holt said. "No heat signature, no energy trail, no communication signal. To any standard scanner, we look like nothing. We look like empty space." Ilara nodded slowly. "And once we get there," Holt finally looked up at her. His pale blue eyes were steady. "Once we get there, we finish it." The story of Project Iron Veil did not begin with ships. It began with a question, and a man stubborn enough to keep asking it. Admiral James Holt had joined Earth's military at the age of 20. Back when space travel was still relatively new and the galaxy still felt mostly friendly, he had served on patrol ships, then command ships, then eventually in the highest levels of Earth's Defense Council. And through all of that, through all the meetings and briefings and mission reports, One thought had never left him. What if something out there is stronger than us? He had seen how humanity explored, always moving forward, always expanding, always confident, and confidence was good. But confidence without preparation was just luck wearing a nice suit, so he had started preparing. At first it was small things, studies, research papers, quiet conversations with engineers and scientists about what a next-generation warship might look like if it was designed not for exploration, but purely for combat. He was not popular for it. Some people found his questions uncomfortable. A few even called him paranoid. He did not stop. The proposal he eventually brought to the Earth Defense Council was detailed, specific and very expensive. He wanted to build a secret fleet, hidden from the public, hidden from most of the military, hidden from any foreign intelligence that might be watching Earth. He wanted the ships to be far more advanced than anything in the official fleet, and he wanted them stored underground on planets that appeared dead and empty. The council had debated for 3 days. In the end, they approved it. Not everyone was enthusiastic. Some members thought it was a waste of resources. Some thought the whole thing was unnecessary paranoia. But the argument that had won was simple. If we are right to worry, this fleet saves us. If we are wrong to worry, we never use it and it costs us only money. Either way, they decided, the risk of not building it was greater than the risk of building it. Construction began in secret the following year. The ships were not built on Earth. Building them on Earth would have been impossible. Too many eyes, too many satellites, too many curious people asking too many questions. Even the largest underground facility on Earth could not have hidden 500 warships without someone noticing. So they built them elsewhere. 3 planets were chosen, all of them in the outer rim, all of them officially classified as dead worlds. No atmosphere, no water, no life, no value. The kind of planets that appeared on maps but that nobody ever visited, because there was simply no reason to. Dust 1, Dust 2, and Dust 3. Teams of engineers and scientists were sent out quietly, in small groups over a period of years. They were told they were going to work on a long-term classified research project. They signed agreements that said they could not speak about their work to anyone outside the project. Their families were told only that they were on a long deep space assignment. The teams arrived and found the planets exactly as advertised. Dead gray, cold, silent, they got to work. The caverns were carved first. Massive drilling machines ate through the rock of each planet, creating underground spaces large enough to hold entire fleets. The rock they removed was processed and used for construction material. Nothing was wasted. The planets absorbed the work happening inside them and showed nothing on the outside. Then the ships began to take shape. The chief engineer of Project Iron Veil was a woman named Dr. Yenna Marsh. She was brilliant, difficult, and completely devoted to her work. She had been recruited by Holt personally. He had visited her at her research lab on Luna and spent 4 hours explaining what he wanted to build and why. She had listened without saying a word. Then she had said, "When do we start?" Dr. Marsh had not been interested in building better versions of the ships that already existed. That was not the point. If Project Iron Veil ever had to be used, it would be because the existing fleet had already failed. Building the same thing again, just with newer paint, would not solve the problem. She wanted to build something different, something the enemy would not recognize, would not know how to fight, would not have prepared for. She started with the engines. Standard military ships produced significant heat when their engines were running. Heat was a signal. Heat said, "I am here, I am moving, come and find me." Marsh redesigned the engine from the ground up, creating a system that ran cold, that contained its own heat signature and recycled it internally. From the outside, a running Iron Veil engine looked the same as an empty piece of space. Then she worked on the shields. Existing Earth shields were good against most things, but Vreth weapons had already proven they could break through them without much effort. Marsh studied the data from every battle against the Vreth, every recording, every scan, and she found a pattern in their weapons, a specific frequency that all Vreth energy weapons operated on. She built shields that were specifically tuned to absorb and redirect that frequency. It took her 4 years to get it right. When she finally tested it and watched a Vreth-grade weapon hit the shield and do almost nothing, she had sat down on the floor of the lab and cried, not from sadness, from exhaustion and relief, and the particular joy that comes from solving a problem that everyone else said could not be solved. The weapons on the Iron Veil ships were different too. Earth's standard military used energy weapons. Similar in design to the Vreth, Marsh decided that was a mistake. She switched to mass-accelerated projectiles, essentially very large and very fast pieces of metal, fired at speeds that no shield in the known galaxy had been designed to stop. The Vreth had never encountered this kind of weapon in serious combat. Their shields were built to handle energy. They were not built to handle a piece of dense metal moving at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The first time they tested the weapon in a deep space firing exercise, the target ship, an old decommissioned cruiser, was simply gone, not damaged, not destroyed in pieces, gone. The projectile had punched through it so fast and so completely that there was almost nothing left. The team had gone silent for a long moment. Then someone had started clapping. And then everyone had started clapping. 22 years passed this way. Building, testing, improving, waiting. New engineers replaced old ones who retired. Young scientists came out to the dust planets and spent years of their lives on a project they could never talk about. Some of them left. Some of them stayed for their entire careers. Some of them had children who grew up knowing only that their parent worked somewhere classified and could not say where. The fleet grew slowly, ship by ship, 100, then 200, then 300 at year 18. A junior engineer named Torrin Wade had made a mistake while running a systems test on Dust 2. He had accidentally sent a low-level communication signal that had bounced off a satellite and been picked up by a civilian monitoring station on the edge of the outer rim. The monitoring station had logged it as background noise and ignored it. But the incident had terrified the senior staff. For 2 weeks, everyone had held their breath, waiting to see if anyone would come looking. No one did. The signal had been too faint, too brief, too easy to dismiss. But the 2 weeks of fear had reminded everyone of the stakes. If the Vreth ever found out about the fleet before it was ready, it would be over. Not just the project, everything. The Vreth would come directly for Earth, and there would be nothing left to fight back with, so they were even more careful after that. By the time the Vreth arrived and the war began, Project Iron Veil had 512 ships, and not one enemy intelligence officer in the galaxy knew they existed. The Vreth had sent scouts and spies to study Earth's military capacity. They had counted every ship, every weapon system, every soldier in the official defense fleet. They had calculated exactly how long it would take them to destroy it. They had shared that information with High General Vroth-Ka, and he had been satisfied. He had seen Earth's fleet, he had judged it. He had decided it was not a serious threat. He had never looked underground. Now in the command room of Dust 3, Admiral Holt stood before his assembled officers and spoke for the last time before the fleet moved. "You have given years of your lives to this," he said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room. "Some of you have been here since the beginning. Some of you came later, but all of you stayed. All of you kept the secret. All of you kept building when it would have been easier to stop." He paused and looked around the room at the faces watching him. Young faces, old faces, tired faces, determined faces. "The Vreth believe we are finished," he said. "The rest of the galaxy believes we are finished. They have looked at what they can see, and they have decided the outcome, but they have not seen what is down here. They do not know what we built. They have no idea what is about to arrive in their war zone." He let that sit for a moment. "We do not go to fight a battle," he said. "We go to end a war. We go to send a message that will be heard across every star system in this galaxy. We go to make very sure that no one ever again makes the mistake of thinking that humanity is easy to destroy." The room was silent. Then someone started to stand, and then everyone stood. And there was no applause, no shouting, just 500 officers on their feet, looking at an old admiral who had spent 22 years preparing for this moment. Holt looked back at them. 6 hours, he said. "Then we move." Deep in the Keth corridor, a Vreth patrol fleet moved through space on its usual route. The commander of the patrol, a junior officer named Greth Val, was bored. Patrol duty was always boring. Nothing ever happened out here. The humans had no ships left worth worrying about. The war was almost over, everyone knew it. His scanner showed empty space in all directions. He saw nothing. Because there was nothing to see, not yet. 512 dark ships moved through the black, cold and silent and invisible, like shadows that had learned to travel. They left no heat, no signal, no trace. They were there and they were not there. Present in the dark, like a held breath, they moved toward the Keith corridor, and the Vreth patrol fleet that sat in their path had no idea. No idea at all. Grethval was eating when the universe changed. He was sitting in the commander's chair of the Vreth patrol ship Korath, holding a small container of warm liquid that the Vreth used as food. His boots were up on the edge of the console. His eyes were half closed. The Keth corridor was quiet, as it always was, as it had always been, as he expected it to always be. His scanner operator, a young soldier named Veth, was running routine checks on the equipment. Veth stopped. He looked at his screen. He looked again, Commander, he said. Grethval did not open his eyes. What? My scanner is showing something. It is probably a rock, Grethval said. Log it and move on, Commander, Veth said again, and this time his voice was different, quieter, with something underneath it that Grethval had not heard from a soldier in a long time. Fear. Grethval opened his eyes and looked at Veth. Veth was staring at his screen with his mouth slightly open. Grethval put down his food and stood up slowly. He walked across the command room and looked at the scanner screen. For a moment he did not understand what he was seeing. Then he understood, and the food he had just eaten turned cold in his stomach. The scanner was showing 512 contacts, not fighters, not small ships. Warships, large ones, moving fast, moving silently, moving directly toward the Vreth patrol fleet with no communication. No warning signal, no identification. They had come from nowhere. 1 second the scanner had shown empty space, and the next second it was showing 512 ships that had appeared out of the dark, like they had always been there, and had simply decided, at this exact moment, to be seen. Battle stations, Grethval said. His voice was very calm. He was proud of that later. In the moments he had to be proud of anything. The alarm sounded through the Korath and across all 12 ships in the patrol fleet. Soldiers ran to their positions. Weapon systems came online, shields activated. Grethval opened a channel to the other 11 ships in his fleet. Unknown contacts, 500 plus, bearing direct. All ships prepare to engage. Someone get a message to High Command immediately. He paused. Tell them we need everything they have. Commander Alara Voss stood on the bridge of the IWS Resolute, the lead ship of the Iron Veil fleet, and watched the Vreth patrol formation on her own scanner. 12 ships, 12 against 512. She almost felt sorry for them, almost. She thought of New Carthage. She thought of 12,000 people who had been erased in 47 minutes. She thought of 200,000 dead across 16 colonies. She thought of the families that no longer existed, the children who had not grown up, the lives that had simply been taken because a powerful empire had decided that humanity was too small and too weak to matter. The almost went away communications team, she said. Ready, Commander? Jam everything. Their signals, their comms, their distress calls, all of it. Nothing leaves this corridor. Understood. Jamming in 3, 2, 1. The communications officer pressed the command in that moment. Every signal the Vreth patrol fleet was trying to send died. The message to High Command that Grethval had ordered. Gone the distress signals from the other 11 ships. Gone. The automated emergency beacon that activated when a Vreth ship went to battle stations. Gone. The Keth corridor became an island, cut off from everything. Whatever happened here would happen in silence, and the rest of the Vreth Empire would not know about it until it was already over. Ilara looked at her weapons officer. A broad-shouldered man named Lieutenant Cole Rains, Mr. Rains, she said. Commander, you may begin. Grethval saw the first human ships fire. He had expected energy weapons. The humans always used energy weapons. His shields were built for energy weapons. Standard Vreth military shielding could absorb an enormous amount of energy-based damage. They had stopped human weapons many times before without any serious problem. What came instead was not energy. He did not even have a word for it at first. Something moved from the human ships fast, almost too fast to track on the scanner. Not a beam of light, not a pulse of energy. Something physical, something solid, something that hit the nearest Vreth patrol ship like the fist of a god. The ship did not explode, it simply came apart. The projectile went through it so fast and so completely that for a half-second the ship held its shape. And then the shape stopped making sense, and then there was debris where a warship had been. Grethval stared. What was that? He said. Nobody answered because nobody knew on the Resolute. Cole Rains watched the first target disappear from the scanner and felt something strange move through him. Not joy, not excitement, something quieter than that. He had spent 3 years on Dust 3 helping to design and test these weapons. He had run thousands of simulations. He had fired them at dead ships in empty space during exercises. He had always known they worked, but knowing something in a simulation and seeing it work in real combat, against a real enemy in a real war, were completely different things. He exhaled slowly and kept working. "Target 2, he said to his team. "Locked. Fire." The Vreth patrol fleet fired back. All 11 remaining ships opened up at once, sending everything they had toward the Iron Veil fleet. Beams of high-energy light, pulse charges, concussion waves, the full range of Vreth military weaponry, all of it directed at the closest human ships. It hit, and it did almost nothing. The shields that Dr. Yenna Marsh had spent 4 years designing. The shields that had been tuned specifically to the frequency of Vreth energy weapons, held without any difficulty. The energy hit the shields and was absorbed and redirected, spreading out harmlessly into space. The human ships rocked slightly from the impact, the way a heavy door rocks when someone knocks on it, and then they steadied and kept moving on the Vreth ships. The weapon operators looked at their screens and checked their readings and fired again. Same result, the human ships were not stopping. "We're not slowing. We're not showing any sign of damage." Grethval grabbed the edge of his console with both hands. "Increase power," he said. "Maximum output, all weapons. Fire continuously, Commander. We are already at maximum." "Then what is happening?" The weapon operator turned to look at him, and Grethval saw something on that soldier's face that he had never seen on a Vreth soldier in combat before. Confusion. Real, genuine confusion. "Their shields are not breaking," the soldier said. "I do not understand it. Our weapons are hitting them, I can confirm the hits. But the shields are not going down, they are not even dropping." Grethval looked back at his scanner. 3 of his ships were already gone. He had not even noticed them go. He had been so focused on the weapons that were failing to work. Admiral Holt was watching from the secondary command ship, the IWS Patience, positioned slightly behind the main fleet. He watched the battle unfold on his screen and he felt very little. Not because he did not care, he cared enormously. But he had planned this moment so many times in his mind, had run it through so many scenarios and simulations and strategy sessions, that watching it actually happen felt less like a surprise and more like a memory, like watching something he had already seen before. He had imagined this exact scene. The Vreth weapons hitting human shields and failing, the Iron Veil projectiles tearing through Vreth armor like it was not there, the patrol fleet unable to call for help, unable to run, unable to understand what was happening to them. He had imagined it so many times that the real version felt almost quiet. His communications officer spoke. "Admiral, the patrol fleet is attempting to retreat. 2 ships are breaking formation and moving toward the edge of the corridor." "Let them go," Holt said. The officer paused. "Sir?" "Let them go," Holt said again. "We are not here to trap them, we are here to send a message. Let those 2 ships reach the edge of the corridor. Let them report what they saw, let the Vreth know what is coming." He paused. "Fear is a weapon too." Grethval gave the order to retreat when he had 4 ships left. It was not a decision he made slowly. There was nothing left to think about. The battle, if it could even be called a battle, had lasted less than 20 minutes. 10 of his 12 ships were gone. His weapons were useless against the human shields, and the human weapons were cutting through Vreth armor like it was paper. All remaining ships break formation, full speed. "Get out of the corridor." 2 ships listened. 2 ships moved fast toward the edge of the Keth corridor, pushing their engines as hard as they could go. The human fleet let them run, Grethval's own ship. The Korath was not so lucky. A projectile from the Resolute caught the Korath across the back section as it turned to run. The rear third of the ship was simply removed, like someone had taken a knife and cut it away cleanly. The Korath tumbled, losing power, losing atmosphere, losing everything. In the chaos of the last seconds, Grethval managed to get to an emergency pod. The pod ejected, he floated in the dark alone, watching through the small porthole as his ship continued to tumble away into the black, broken and dying. He watched the human fleet move through the corridor where his patrol fleet had been. 512 ships, silent, dark, unstoppable, moving deeper into Vreth territory. He had been a soldier for 20 years. He had fought in many engagements. He had seen strong enemies and weak ones. He had never, in 20 years, felt what he felt in that small, cold pod watching those ships move past him. He felt small. He felt the way he imagined the humans must have felt for the last 3 years. He did not enjoy the feeling. The 2 surviving Vreth ships reached high command 6 hours later. The captains of both ships filed their reports personally, standing in front of a room full of senior Vreth military officers and describing, in detail, what had happened in the Keth corridor. The room was very quiet when they finished. High General Vrothka sat at the head of the table. He was a large being, imposing, with the kind of presence that filled a room without trying. He had commanded the Vreth military for 30 years. He had never lost a campaign. He had reduced dozens of alien civilizations to nothing over the course of his career. He looked at the two captains for a long moment. 500 ships, he said. Yes, High General, human ships, yes. High General, and our weapons did not penetrate their shields. No, High General. We fired at maximum power, sustained fire, direct hits. The shields did not go down. Vrothka was quiet around him. His senior officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One of them, General Kreth, leaned forward. It is not possible. The humans do not have this technology. We have watched their fleet for years. We know what they have, clearly, Vrothka said slowly. We did not know everything. Another silence. Vrothka stood, he was calm, his voice was still steady, but the officers who had served under him for years knew him well enough to see what was underneath the calm. He was afraid, not panicked, not desperate, but afraid in the way that a very powerful and very intelligent being becomes afraid when it realizes it has made a serious mistake. Get me every available fleet in this sector, he said. Pull them from wherever they are. I want them here. I want them ready. And someone find out where those ships came from and how we did not know about them. He paused at the door. And do not tell the civilian population anything yet, not until we know more. He left the room. The officers looked at each other. Nobody spoke. Back in the Keth corridor. The Iron Veil fleet had stopped moving. Alara stood on the bridge of the Resolute and looked at the space around her. The debris of the Vreth patrol fleet drifted slowly in the dark. The battle had lasted 18 minutes. Every Vreth ship except 2 had been destroyed. The Iron Veil fleet had taken no casualties. Not one ship lost. Not one crew member dead. 18 minutes. She let that number sit in her mind for a moment. Then she opened a channel to Admiral Holt. Admiral, the corridor is clear, all targets neutralized. Fleet is holding position. Holt's voice came back, steady as always. Good work, Commander. Begin Phase 2. We move toward the Vreth staging ground at Sector 9. They will be scrambling their main fleet now. I want to be there before they have time to organize. Understood, Alara said. And the 2 ships that escaped? Let them run, Holt said again. By now they have already delivered our message. Alara looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there in the heart of Vreth territory, an empire that had never known fear was learning what it felt like. She thought about the colonies, about New Carthage, about 200,000 people. She thought about the old admiral on a dead planet 22 years ago, asking a question nobody wanted to hear. What if something out there is stronger than us? Something had been, something wasn't anymore. All ships, she said, her voice clear across the fleet-wide channel. This is Commander Voss. We move in 10 minutes.
Keep formation, keep silence, keep moving forward, she paused.
They know we are here now, good. Let them think about what is coming. Let them be afraid for a little while. Another pause. They gave us 3 years of that feeling. I think they have earned a few hours. 512 dark ships turned in the silence of the Keth corridor and moved forward deeper into enemy space, toward the heart of an empire that was only now beginning to understand that it had been wrong about everything. High General Vrothka had not slept in 36 hours. This was unusual for him. He was a being who believed in discipline, in routine, in the kind of controlled life that kept the mind sharp and the body ready. He had slept exactly the same number of hours every night for 30 years. He had eaten at the same times, trained at the same times, worked at the same times. But that was before the Keth corridor. That was before 512 human ships had appeared from nowhere and erased his patrol fleet in 18 minutes. Now he stood in the war room of the Vreth command station at Sector 9 and stared at the large map on the wall and tried to think clearly. Tried to find the mistake he had made. Tried to understand how this had happened. He kept coming back to the same answer. He had underestimated them. It was that simple and that terrible. He had looked at humanity and he had seen a small, young, relatively weak species. He had seen their official fleet, counted their ships, studied their weapons, and decided they were not a serious problem. He had moved against them slowly, methodically, almost lazily, because he had not believed they were capable of surprising him. They had surprised him. Now the question was what to do about it. Sector 9 was the largest Vreth military base in this part of the galaxy. It was enormous, a space station the size of a small moon, built over decades. Home to thousands of soldiers and hundreds of ships, it was the heart of Vreth military operations in this sector, the place from which the campaign against humanity had been planned and directed. Vrothka had pulled every available ship to Sector 9 after the reports from the Keth corridor arrived. He had 240 warships now, gathered in tight formation around the station. He had more coming from deeper in Vreth territory, but they were days away. He had activated every defense system the station had. He had put every soldier on full alert. He had done everything he could do. He was not sure it was enough. General Kreth entered the war room and stood beside Vrothka. Kreth was younger than the High General, faster and more aggressive in his thinking. He had always believed the campaign against humanity would be easy, and he had said so many times. He was not saying so now. Our long-range scanners have located the human fleet, Kreth said. They are moving through the Delian Passage. At their current speed, they will reach Sector 9 in approximately 4 hours. Vrothka did not look away from the map. How many ships? 512. The same number as the Keth corridor. No losses on their side. No losses, Vrothka said quietly. None that we can detect. Vrothka was quiet for a moment. And our weapons? Kreth paused. Our science team has been analyzing the data from the 2 surviving ships of the patrol fleet. They believe the human shields are designed specifically to counter our energy weapons. The shields absorb the energy and redistribute it. Our weapons are hitting them but not damaging them, so we cannot hurt them. Not with our standard weapons. No, the science team is working on alternatives, but they need time. We do not have time. No, Kreth agreed. We do not. Vrothka finally turned away from the map and looked at his general directly. Can we win this battle? Kreth was a soldier, and soldiers did not lie to their commanders about things that mattered. I do not know, he said. Our ships outnumber theirs in this location, but their weapons are far superior and our weapons appear to be ineffective against their shields. The mathematics are not in our favor, Vrothka nodded slowly. He walked to the window of the war room and looked out at the gathered fleet. 240 ships arranged in careful formation around the station, the largest concentration of Vreth military power in this part of the galaxy. He thought about the 30 years he had served, the campaigns he had won, the civilizations he had reduced to silence, the reputation he had built as a commander who never lost. Then he thought about 18 minutes in the Keth corridor. Prepare the fleet, he said. We fight. Ilara received the scout report 4 hours before they reached Sector 9. She read it carefully, then read it again, then called Admiral Holt. 240 ships at the station, she said. They pulled everything they had in this sector. Yes, Holt said. That is almost half our number. Yes. But their weapons cannot get through our shields, correct? Ilara looked at the scanner showing the path ahead, the Delian Passage opening up into the wide space around Sector 9. The largest Vreth military installation she had ever seen on any scan. How do you want to approach this, she said. There was a brief pause on Holt's end. The same way we have approached everything else, he said. Directly. The Iron Veil fleet came out of the Delian Passage and into the open space of Sector 9 at exactly the time the Vreth scanners had predicted. There was no attempt at surprise this time. This time they wanted to be seen. 512 dark warships emerged from the passage in perfect formation, spread wide across the space in front of Sector 9 like a wall, like a horizon, like something that could not be argued with. On the Vreth command station, every screen showed the same thing, the human fleet, larger than anything the Vreth had assembled in this sector, moving forward without hesitation, without slowing, without any communication. A junior officer on the station turned to her commander and said, very quietly, they are not stopping. No, the commander said. They are not. Vrothka gave the order to fire. 240 Vreth ships opened up simultaneously. The space between the fleets became bright with energy weapons, with pulse charges, with every offensive capability the Vreth military possessed. It was the largest single firing of Vreth weapons in this campaign. Perhaps the largest in years, it hit the Iron Veil fleet like a storm hitting a mountain. The mountain did not move, shield after shield absorbed the energy. Ship after ship took the hits and held. The Iron Veil fleet rocked from the force of it. individual ships shuddering under the impact of hundreds of weapons firing at once. But none of them went down. None of them lost power. None of them stopped. They kept coming. The Vreth fired again. Same result. And then the Iron Veil fleet fired back. What happened next lasted 3 hours and 41 minutes. Later, historians would write about the Battle of Sector 9 in careful, measured language, describing formations and tactics and the technical details of weapon systems and shield frequencies. But for the people who were there, on both sides it was not careful or measured. It was the most terrifying and overwhelming thing they had ever seen. The Iron Veil projectiles tore through Vreth ships one after another. The Vreth ships fired constantly and achieved almost nothing. The human fleet moved through the Vreth formation like water moving through a broken wall, steady and unstoppable and completely without mercy. Vreth ships fell in groups, 3 here, 5 there. A line of 8 that caught a coordinated volley from a dozen Iron Veil ships and simply ceased to exist. The Vreth tried everything. They changed formations. They targeted specific human ships with concentrated fire from multiple ships at once. They sent smaller fast attack vessels to try to find weak points in the human shields. They tried ramming 2 Vreth ships deliberately driving themselves into Iron Veil vessels at full speed. The Iron Veil ships took the impact and kept fighting. Nothing worked. In the war room of Sector 9, Hrothgar watched his fleet die, ship by ship, screen by screen, contact by contact disappearing from the scanner. His 240 ships became 200, then 150, then 100, then fewer. He stood very still. He did not shout. He did not pace. He did not give orders that he knew would not change anything. He simply stood and watched and understood, with a clarity that was almost peaceful, that this was the end, not just the end of this battle. The end of the campaign, the end of the war, the end of the assumption that the Vreth could take whatever they wanted from whoever they wanted without consequence. At some point, Kreth appeared beside him. Kreth's face was very different from how it had looked at the beginning of the battle. The confidence was gone, the aggression was gone. What remained was something much simpler. "Shock, High General," Kreth said. "We have 40 ships remaining. Sector 9's defensive weapons have been disabled. The human fleet is moving to surround the station." Hrothgar said nothing. "Your orders, sir." Hrothgar looked at the scanner, at the 40 green dots that were all that remained of what had been the most powerful military force in this part of the galaxy, surrounded by 500 blue dots that had barely changed in number at all. "Stand down," he said. Kreth blinked. "Sir, stand down," Hrothgar said again. "All ships cease fire, lower weapons. Signal the human fleet that we are standing down." A long silence. "And then," Hrothgar said, "get me a direct channel to whoever is commanding those ships. It is time to talk." Ilara was on the bridge of the Resolute when the signal came through. Her communications officer looked up with an expression that mixed surprise with something that might have been disbelief. "Commander, we are receiving a signal from Sector 9. It is the Vreth High General. He is requesting to speak with our commanding officer. He says he wishes to discuss terms." Ilara stood very still for a moment. Terms, the Vreth, who 3 years ago had destroyed a ship carrying a human peace message and sent the wreckage back, who had erased 16 colonies without a word of warning or explanation, who had laughed at humanity and called them weak and decided they were already finished. The Vreth wanted to discuss terms. She opened the channel to Admiral Holt. "Admiral, are you hearing this?" "I am," Holt said. His voice was quiet. "Your call, sir." A pause. "Accept the channel," Holt said. "But I want you to speak, not me. You have been fighting this war from the front. This moment belongs to you." Ilara looked at her communications officer. "Put him through." The voice that came over the channel was deep and steady. It did not sound like a being that had just lost a battle. It sounded like a being that was trying very hard to maintain its dignity in the worst moment of its life. "This is High General Hrothgar of the Vreth Empire. I am speaking to the commander of the human fleet." "This is Commander Ilara Voss of the Earth Defense Fleet," Ilara said. "I am listening." A brief pause. "You have demonstrated capability that we did not anticipate," Hrothgar said, and the words clearly cost him something to say. "We are prepared to discuss an end to hostilities. We are prepared to discuss terms." Ilara looked out at the stars for a moment. She thought about New Carthage. She thought about 12,000 people in 47 minutes. She thought about 200,000 dead. She thought about 3 years of watching the galaxy decide that humanity was already finished. She thought about 22 years of one old admiral building something in the dark, because he believed it would be needed. He had been right. "Hi, General," she said. "We will discuss terms, but I want you to understand something first. This conversation is being broadcast on every open frequency in this sector. Every ship, every station, every listening post within range is hearing this right now. We are not hiding this," a pause from Vrothka. "The terms are simple," Alara continued. "The Vreth will withdraw completely from all human space, every colony, every system. Every territory that was taken or damaged will be acknowledged and compensated. There will be a permanent boundary established between Vreth and human space. And the Vreth will not cross it," another pause. "And if these terms are broken," she said, and her voice was very calm and very clear, "we will come back. And next time we will not stop at Sector 9. The channel was quiet for a long moment. "Agreed," Vrothka said. The news spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Within hours, every major alien civilization had received the broadcast. The conversation between Alara Voss and High General Vrothka had been heard by thousands of listening posts, picked up by civilian ships, relayed from station to station across dozens of star systems. The Karathi ambassador, the one who had sent Earth a message saying he was sorry, and that the Vreth were too powerful to fight, sat in his office and listened to the broadcast 3 times. He did not know what to say. The Sulani, who had said nothing at all when the Vreth came, held an emergency council session that lasted 14 hours. At the end of it, they sent a message to Earth, a long and formal message full of careful language and diplomatic phrasing that said, essentially, that they had always believed in humanity and were very pleased by this outcome. Earth's ambassador read the message once and set it aside without responding. There would be time for diplomacy later, on Earth. The news arrived in the middle of the night. There had been no announcement, no warning, no prepared speech from any government official. The broadcast had simply started appearing on screens and communication devices everywhere, and people had woken up and seen it and called their families and stepped outside into the dark streets and looked up at the sky. Cities that had been quiet with fear became loud with something different. Not celebration exactly. Not at first. The losses had been too great for pure celebration. Too many people remembered too many names of people who were not coming back. It was something more complicated than celebration. It was the specific feeling of having been told you were finished and then not being finished. Of having the whole universe decide your story was over, and then writing another chapter anyway. A woman in the city of Nairobi stood on her roof in the warm night and looked up at the stars and did not say anything for a long time. An old man in a small town in Norway sat by his window with a cup of tea and cried without knowing exactly why. A group of children in a school in Mumbai who had grown up knowing only the war gathered in a classroom, and their teacher tried to explain what had happened and found that she did not have the right words. And so she simply said, "We are safe. We are going to be safe now." The children looked at her. Then one of them, a small girl in the front row, said, "Did we win?" The teacher thought about New Carthage, about the colonies, about 3 years of loss and fear, about 512 ships built in secret under dead planets by people who believed enough to spend their lives on a question that might never have needed answering. "Yes," the teacher said. "We won." Admiral James Holt stood alone on the observation deck of the IWS Patience and looked at Sector 9. The battle was over. The Vreth fleet had stood down. Negotiators were already preparing to begin the formal process of establishing terms. It would take months, maybe years, to undo everything the Vreth had done, to rebuild what had been destroyed, to bring back some version of normal to the colonies that had survived. Some things could not be undone, he knew that. But some things could be built new, and that was something. He was 61 years old, and he was very tired, and his knees hurt from standing too long. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a younger version of himself was asking a question in an empty room, and nobody was listening, and he was writing it down anyway, and beginning to plan. He had spent 22 years building something because he was afraid of what might happen if he did not. He had been right to be afraid. He had been right to build it anyway. He put his hand on the cold glass of the observation window and looked out at the stars, at the debris of a battle that had ended a war, at the dark space where 512 ships sat quiet and still and waiting. He thought about what came next, because something always came next. The galaxy was large, and humanity was still young in it, and there would be other questions that needed asking. and other things that needed building, and other moments when the universe would look at the small blue planet and decide it already knew the outcome. He would be ready. He was always ready. Ilara's final message to the fleet was short. She stood on the bridge of the Resolute and looked at the faces of her crew, and opened the fleet-wide channel for the last time. "This is Commander Voss," she said. 3 years ago, the galaxy decided we were finished. A year ago, most of our own people had stopped believing we could win. 22 years ago, one man asked a question that nobody wanted to hear, and started building an answer in the dark. She paused. Today, the Vreth asked us for terms. Today, the galaxy heard us on every frequency. Today, the universe learned something it will not forget. Another pause. Do not come for humanity. She closed the channel outside the Resolute. 512 ships sat in the silence of space around a defeated enemy station, dark and still and patient, like they had always been there. Like they had always been waiting, like they had known all along how this story would end.